So, my name's Kisa. I'm here with Mike, and this is my experiment for my podcast interview. I don't really know what it's going to be.
I'm an experiment. I've been an experiment before.
Okay, maybe I'll ask you about that later.
I'm just being silly.
But I do want to thank you for being here for my inaugural session here with our producer, Jeff. I'll say his name.
Yay, Jeff. Happy to help. Happy to be here.
And so my idea is pretty broad. I love asking questions. I love discussing ideas, but I also love just knowing people personally. So this will be, I think, part interview of a kind to just know more about you, but also we'll probably get into some broader questions, maybe more theoretical ideas or...
Beautiful.
You know, who knows where all it'll go. But I just want to introduce them. We barely know each other.
We've known each other a week.
Yes.
Best of friends. Maybe a little longer,
And we know each other because we go to the same gym at the same time.
Yeah.
And we've been basically just saying hey or hi for a few months now.
Yeah.
A number of months.
Yep.
But then we have a group now. We have a little WhatsApp group, and it's called Crunchies because our gym is Crunch. And so everyone's had a chance to get to know each other a little bit more and post events and what's going on. So I said I was going to be at this little Pride festival nearby. I came, you were there, and we ended up spending the whole day hanging out. We hit 3 different spots.
We went from there, we went to the Filipino festival, and then we went to Almanac.
Yes, where they were doing
Oktoberfest.
But we didn't really participate in that.
Wait, a beer.
Right.
And a pretzel.
And a pretzel.
Can't get any more Oktoberfest than that. We totally did Oktoberfest.
Yeah, what more do we need? Right. Okay, but I was really happy to learn that you are super easy to hang out with, super fun to talk to, and within 7 minutes, I would say, of you saying my name and us connecting at the Pride Festival, you shared something very interesting with me that I am going to ask you about.
In 7 minutes?
Now.
Wow.
I mean, that's my estimate, but it felt very quick.
Because I shared a lot that day.
You shared a lot that day.
I'm just not sure what order things came in.
You're like, what are you about to say right now?
No, go ahead.
The reason I know it was early on is because we hadn't even moved yet. We were just standing on the corner when you shared that you spent, I believe, 9 years?
8.
8 years as a Franciscan monk.
Yes.
So,
okay.
I have questions.
Ask away.
I asked a few that day, but, first, I just wanted to know at what point in your life you knew that this was a likelihood.
Oh. So if we're going to talk theological or spiritual, as the two can go hand in hand, like I have probably been a Franciscan from the day I was born. If you look at those values of being attached and attracted to the lesser than, not being really attached to like money and wealth and those sort of things, and just a general reaction to people and humility. So that's been who I am my whole life. I didn't really start thinking about it. It was right after college I thought about it for a little bit. But I was 43 or 44 when one day I woke up and it was on my mind and it did not leave my mind. Like, it was so weird. It was almost an obsession. I didn't even know any Franciscans here. I wasn't even that good of a Catholic. So I went and found someone. I told them my story and everything. And they're like, well, okay, hang out with us for a little while and see what you think. And I did for a couple of years, and then I joined.
For a couple years?
Yeah, so I got to know them for a couple of years before I actually joined.
Is that probably encouraged?
Oh, yeah, that's you have to do that.
So what did you already know about the lifestyle when you woke up?
It was funny. I just pictured myself in a habit. That's what I woke up and thought about. But I've known Franciscans through my life, and I know what they're committed to and what their work usually is and how they are. When it comes to church, they're usually not always, but usually pretty low theology. You will hear sometimes people talk about dogma, and you have to have the right belief, orthodoxy. The Franciscans will talk about orthopraxy. You do the right thing. Don't worry about the theology part. That comes later. So don't because you think you know something, then you have to respond to it. You just go out and do the right things. And the Franciscans would say, you just do what Jesus did, and the thoughts, all the rest of it will come later.
Okay, that's what I was wondering. How do you know what the right thing is? What Jesus would do?
That's what they would say. Well, at least that's a starting point.
Okay.
Yeah, because a lot of that, then you start talking about discernment and prayer and reflection and wondering what God is calling you to do and how you test that out internally and then how you test that out in community and kind of just go from there. Yeah, so that's more of a Franciscan style, where there's other religious communities that would be like, here's the rule, this is what you do.
Yeah, they sound much more free-flowing than...
Franciscans are a mess. They love them. Well, because there's also, like, if you look at, like, the Dominicans, there's Dominicans, that's it. They've always been the same. There's not been many splits off of them. When you look at the Franciscans, I mean, even from the very beginning, before Francis even died, well, they even kicked Francis out before he died. There's so many hundreds of branches of them. They just keep splitting off and doing their own thing and then just trying to get pulled back together and then they split off. I mean, there's just so many different ways and movements of freedom and discernment that has always been a Franciscan thing.
Okay. Ignorant question here.
Yeah.
Are both the Dominicans and the Franciscans under the umbrella of the Catholic Church?
Oh, got it. I should do that, yes. So within Catholicism, there are many different spiritualities. And the spirituality, I guess you could maybe just say maybe how they focus on the world or how they understand a certain aspect. So what happens is there's a person who has this unique experience of life, relationship with God, whatever. Well, then people want to start following that person. So they start having different charisms. So there's many different charisms in the Catholic Church. So there's Dominican, there's Jesuits, there's Franciscans, Augustinians, Benedictines. I mean, the list goes on. Yeah. There's hundreds of religious communities. I mean, probably thousands within that umbrella of the Catholic Church.
And would you say that there are beliefs or practices among the Franciscans that would depart much from how people think of Catholicism?
Yes, it would actually. So you really want to get theological here. So we're going to do this. I can do this.
Let's think of a broad audience.
Let's do this. Let's do this.
Okay.
So well, I'm good with this. Most mainline Christians will believe God created the world, humans screwed it up, and then God said, okay, I will send my son to die as a sacrificial lamb so that I can love you again. Franciscans would say Jesus was never an afterthought. Jesus was from the beginning. So from the beginning, God created the world. The whole point that at some point in time, Jesus was going to come just to help unify us and bring us into the Trinity, into creation, to help you bringing. It's always about bringing. So it's like Jesus was coming to show us how to be. And yes, we killed Jesus because that's what we did, all the prophets. But that didn't stop Jesus. Jesus got up out of the grave and just did what Jesus had intended to do from the beginning of time. So Franciscans would say it's always been love from the beginning, not love, death, suffering, then love again. So mainline Christians, and particularly Catholics, would do Jesus died for my sins. Mm-hmm. Franciscans would say Jesus loved me, period. Okay. Maybe in spite of my sins, maybe. So, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's very different. So some, maybe a very simple way of saying it, most people will say Easter is the biggest holiday in the Christian tradition. Franciscans would say Christmas. Because, I mean, dying and getting out of the dead, I mean, you can't kill Jesus. If Jesus is God, you can't kill. That was a no-brainer. Jesus was going to get up. Why would Jesus ever become one of us? Why would God become one of us? Why would the Word incarnate? That's the true thing to reflect on.
Okay.
Yeah. That was very theological.
Yeah, but
I hope that
it was both concise and I think understandable, probably for an everyday, for our dozens of listeners.
Now, you do know I've just alienated half of the Christians that are listening to this, maybe 2/3 of them.
I don't, I'm curious how many everyday Christians think real long and hard about questions like this. I don't know.
They don't.
How do you, where does your belief system lie now? Do you believe still all of the things you just said about the Franciscans?
So the first thing we were taught in theology school is theology is the worst way to describe God. So what that means is if there's a God, we will never understand what that is. We just can't grasp it. We can talk about it, we can try to explain it and describe it, but because of that, our words and our ideas and beliefs are always going to be kind of short-sighted. So I preface everything that you just asked me about what I believe now is saying I'm very much on an intra-faith path. as opposed to just saying this is the only answer, this is the only way. If you keep scratching below different religions, past dogma, past the historical pieces, because they're all flavored with history and geography, where they come from has a huge piece of how they're trying to understand what the sacred in their life is. If you keep scratching past that, you really start coming to the same answers.
Yeah, so that's my next question was going to be, what is one of the core things that you just think?
It's all one.
Okay.
There's really no separation. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Now, how I practice that in my life, I would still say, if you asked me if I was Christian, I would still say yes, but obviously there would be people who would challenge me on that. I'm very comfortable at the mosque. I pray like a Muslim really easily. I love Islam, but I also am pretty comfortable with Hinduism. And understanding that and how that, and can pray pretty easily as a Hindu as well. So, yeah.
You're open.
I'm open. And those three are the ones who resonate the most with me. I don't know why, but they just do.
All right, I'm going to back up a little bit to, I want to know what your life looked like. What were you doing? What did you have going on? What were your relationships like? What were you doing for a living that morning that you woke up?
So I was living in Oakland, had been here probably 5 years. Is that right? 40? Yeah, I'd been praying in California about 5 years, working with people with intellectual and developmental disabilities, actually the same job I have now. Single. Dating had not went well for me like I thought it would. Go out here was much easier. Dating was much harder than I thought it would be when I moved here. There is no doubt that part of my attraction to the Franciscans was the brotherhood, that sense of family. If you look at kind of my hook through life, like the thing that always hooks me, is I've always been searching a bit for a family. Yeah, so that idea of brotherhood was a real big attraction for me. Yeah.
Because your own family was?
And I don't want to talk too publicly about them. They were who they were. My dad's still alive. My mom died 13 years ago now. They came from southeastern Kentucky. They both grew up with their own traumas from those hills and what the hollers do to people, and they did the best they could, but there's some history there.
Hollers?
You've never heard the term holler?
No.
Holler is a good Kentucky word.
Is it?
Yes.
Enlighten us, please.
Well, you should even talk about maybe when our future vice president came from a holler, possible future vice president.
Which one are you talking about?
Vance.
Okay, I thought so, but
yeah. So holler is just it's a Kentucky term. It's back up in the woods when you're up in the mountains, not hills, but not mountains, but they're hills, and you could just holler across at each other. Like there was just communication, but you're pretty far away from each other.
Did you really think I was going to know this term? Is this like a really widespread term? That's a funny one. I like it.
It is funny. I grew up hearing the word. That's where I came. My dad grew up in a holler. It's a pretty common southeastern Kentucky, Ohio term.
All right.
But yeah, I am often forget that people out here have no idea what that means.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like it. I'm going to start throwing it out there and see who it's a dog whistle of sorts.
Yeah. It's a culture, probably more than anything.
I just want to know who the Kentuckians are out there.
If you say holler, the Kentuckians will know what a holler is. I guess Tennesseans too. I don't know about.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know in other places. Anyway, enough of holler stuff.
Okay, so the other thing I learned about you that day, which might seem like a no-brainer to people who don't live in places quite as liberal and open as where we live, is that you're gay.
Yes.
And because you are at the Pride Festival, but the reason I say that is there are plenty of people who are not in any way, not even a little bit gay, who would go to that festival just for fun or to support people. And yeah. So you said that when you woke up that morning thinking about the Franciscan life, you were trying to date. You're obviously knew your sexual orientation. I would just love to hear about that decision, because you're going into a celibate life. It's a huge decision, no matter what your sexual orientation. But did you also have to disclose? I imagine this was a big part of it, right? You had to.
So one of the beauties of the Franciscans, and particularly of Franciscans on the West Coast, is they are less concerned about who you are sexually as long as you know who you are sexually. Because if you're going to pull off something like chastity or celibacy, but chastity for Franciscans, you've got to know what's going inside of you. You've just got to know your attractions, your lust, your demons, whatever you want to call any of that, your enjoyments, your pleasures, all that stuff. Because if you don't know it, you will fail miserably. Especially if you're somebody who is very just very uncomfortable in the world of sex, maybe gay but closeted, doesn't even know it themselves. It starts coming out in different and stranger ways. So they were always just really clear. As long as you know who you are and you can say it and you can deal with it, you're good with us. Yeah.
Okay. I kind of want to go on that different and stranger ways part.
Okay.
One of the questions I had about this is wondering if, given that you lived the life of a monk, and specifically in the Catholic Church, and you are gay, I wondered if you ever feel reluctant to talk about those things together or one or the other, knowing people's tendency to conflate homosexuality with pedophilia.
Sure. I've never been asked that question before. I was never uncomfortable talking about it. Granted, there would have been some arenas where I would have not have shared that information. Like if I was preaching on a Sunday to a congregation of 500 people, I probably would not have come out. But I did a lot of spiritual direction and a lot of retreat work with folks who were queer. So people knew who I was. So that was no big surprise for folks. That pedophilia thing, it's a really interesting attachment that goes with the Catholic Church right now, and particularly religious men, priest brothers and those kind of things. Obviously, I knew guys who had been accused and some who were pedophiles, just from living in the life, but very few. But it's a huge stigma that kind of falls on us right now, or on them right now still. I'll be honest, I'll tell you what was the strangest thing for me. It was less the gay connection. It took me years after I left to be comfortable to let a kid hug me. Because in the life, we would never have allowed it. It was just kid hug, like, if a child touched you, you were just very aware, like who was watching, what was going on. Because you didn't want to be accused. I mean, it was kind of an overreaction, but a good overreaction, don't get me wrong. But it took years for me to get used to, just to be like, oh, this is actually normal. Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
So it wasn't that way before all of the scandals came out in the.
No, I mean, I think so. One of the things you have to do when you think about religious, and I keep calling that because religious are the official monks, brothers, nuns, sisters, those kind of things. Up until the Second Vatican Council in the early 60s, they would have been secluded. They would have been cloistered. You would not have really had much access to them. So there was never a lot of chance for stuff like that to happen. Except in a church, maybe, and that's why so many things happened in sacristies, because that's where kids would be around religious, because there was no other place in the world where that really happened. Nuns maybe in classrooms, but it wasn't. Yeah, it's just different there. Yeah.
Okay, well, it's sort of related. I'm wondering, during that time, or even now, did you, as having, obviously absorbed as a belief system the tenets of Christianity, Catholicism, I understand what you're saying about within Franciscan monks, they wanted you to know who you were, but ultimately so you could fight it or resist it.
Yes.
During that time and now, did you believe that you were born flawed in this way?
No. So, no. I don't see. I don't think in terms of being flawed. Well, that's not true. Sometimes if I'm down on myself, I think I'm broken, but that's just a personal psychological thing more than anything. Theologically, I have never really came to it from that attraction or that proposition. I don't even know how to answer that question, really.
Did you have people telling you that to be homosexual was...
So the church has definitely taught that through the years, if that's where we're going with this, yeah. I can argue that back pretty well. and talk about, the scripture passages, where it comes from, kind of what was going on. Of course, a lot of that then starts, and this is where one of the struggles comes from, like mainline Christianity and more or fundamental Christianity, about if the Bible is black and white Word of God, or if it has room for interpretation. Catholics would say there's room for interpretation because you have to understand who wrote it, where it was written, who it was written to, why was it written, what was the point, what was the purpose.
Cultural context.
Where some people would say, no, that's just black and white, and you've got to believe it the way it is. Yeah. So, I guess for me, I mean, obviously the Catholic Church is not a supporter of homosexuality, which there's some hypocrisy even in that, because so many of the men who are in it are. But frustrating at times, but I never internalized that. I never felt worse about myself. I just understood the institution as the institution is, and always worked to kind of work against that and make it better, especially for the folks who were in it. I can't tell you how many times somebody would come to me for spiritual direction, or somebody, and they finally whisper those words, like, I think I'm gay. And I'm like, for me, just say, okay, cool, well, let's talk about that. And like, for them to have such a warm, welcoming embrace to their dirty, dark secret, it changes their life. And actually, that was something I enjoyed being in the church, was be able to help people have those experiences.
Do you feel that, so where does the conversation go from there, though? If somebody says, I believe that I'm gay, and then you're there to say, God loves you, and you're perfect, but don't go around being gay?
Oh, I would never say that.
Or don't be sexually active?
I would never say that.
But that is kind of the message of the church, isn't it?
It is the message of the church.
Okay. So you were on the inside.
So the church has
Double
this.
agent.
The church has this stance that sex can only be for creating babies. So if you understand its logic, where it came from and where it's at, then you can understand like how to like, I don't know, troubleshoot it. I'm not sure that's the right word, but just to kind of see like, okay, so if that's where you're starting every premise from, oh, well, let's talk about where that doesn't make sense and how my life can still fit into that, but not be that at the same time. I don't know if that's making any sense. So, in Catholicism, there is things that are proclaimed infallible, like you have to believe this, and then there's certain degrees of dogma. And they are degrees. One of the problems is it's all been put in a book called the Catechist book, and everyone thinks it means the same because it's in the same book. But those are different things pulled from many different places through the history of time. Things are proclaimed to be infallible, we are expected to believe. Things that are different degrees of dogma, we are expected to wrestle with.
And homosexuality is one of them?
Oh, yeah, yes.
Okay.
Yeah. None of that is like infallible.
Huh.
Yeah.
This is news to me.
Most
but
most
specific
Catholics,
to the Catholic Church.
Most Catholics would not realize that there's certain levels of dogma and teachings, and like it, because everyone just thinks, well, at least historically, people just thought it was black and white. Like this is what they taught, this is what I have to do. But that's really changed in the last 30, 40 years. Well, it has changed a lot in the last 30, 40 years, but there's still that perception sometimes. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So, again, I'm not here to defend the Catholic Church by any means. By no means. It's not to say it's not a beautiful institution, and it does some beautiful things. I mean, you haven't asked me. Well, I guess I could talk about that a little bit. Like when I became Catholic, because I was not raised Catholic.
Oh, I did mean to ask you that. Yeah.
There's dogma, which is, okay, there's scripture, there's tradition, which is where the dogmas come from, like how we wrestle with scripture and what's happening in our lives, and there's personal experience. And you've got to take those three as you discern life. Because there are going to be times where you come up with something that's just different. And that's okay if you can say, oh, I've really thought this through, I've prayed about it, I've done these things. I'm coming up with a little bit of a different answer.
That's what my parents would call cafeteria Catholics. Is that the phrase?
No. Well, maybe.
The idea is you pick and choose what you want.
Yeah, the piece that I'm going with though is there's a bit of a discernment. It's not just I like this, I don't like that. I like this, I don't like that. It's not quite that easy because there is a wrestling with it. So again, yes, I was inside this institution that taught that being gay was bad, but I had discerned that being gay was not bad, actually a beautiful thing. So there's a tension there, and often I think the difference between being a cafeteria Catholic is that it's different when you live with the tension as opposed to when you just say, I'm not even going to bother with that.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's interesting. Yeah, I think I lived with the tension for maybe about 2 years.
Okay. That tension's not a bad
Before I
thing.
dismissed it entirely.
Okay. Well, you think, and I think, if you're going to ask me, which you didn't, but I'm going to share it anyway, my understanding of if I had to sum Christianity up to one thing, okay, that might be hard to do. Well, a couple things, but one of them would be this: is we look at this person Jesus who, on a cross, we as human beings throw everything nasty we can throw at him. Crucifixion, names, naked, humility, shame, all the stuff we can throw at somebody. And that person takes all that in and transmutes it back and just says, you're forgiven and God loves you. So for me, my understanding of Christianity, it's that life of you constantly take in tension. You're with people who may not like you. You're with situations that don't make sense, whatever. There's tension, but you transmute it. And you always try to get back love.
So that is a Christianity that I think everybody could be on board with. On the receiving end of it, I realize that it's difficult for people. People want rules. So it is difficult for people to wrestle with things, to be non-judgmental, to return love when they're getting all sorts of other stuff that seems at odds with their deeply held beliefs and that kind of thing. I feel like I have to clear my parents' name because they don't go around calling people cafeteria Catholics. I think I heard that growing up, but no one in my family is religious at this point.
Got it. I knew what that term meant very clearly. What that meant.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, I'll do this. I won't do that. I'll do that. I don't want to do that. Yeah.
Yeah. And that was my journey. I grew up Catholic. I dove in real big in high school. Like, my parents weren't pushing me or anything. I started going to a church where you don't get confirmed until your junior year. So they wanted you to be like real kind of more mature and really contemplated. And, I did the retreats, this charismatic kind of church. And then the next year I was a mentor for the next class. I was all the way in, but I had gay friends. And I was a little gay myself, but I didn't, know it yet. I had a touch.
Yeah.
And I just could not square these ideas. And rather than pick and choose, I was like, well, who am I to pick and choose from the Bible? I just guess I don't believe any of this stuff because I can't believe that these people are meant to just...
Sure. So that would take, I said a minute ago, by no means am I the defender of the Catholic Church. And actually, when I think about religion, I actually have a very love-hate with religion because I see the beauty of religion. I also see the damage it causes in most people, whatever religion. One of the things that I'm really fascinated with, which is off subject a little bit, I love when people will come to me and say, I'm not religious at all. But helping them understand, of course, I'm going to use a religious word, having spiritual moments in their life. So in the Catholic Church, we will talk about Eucharist and communion, that sense of coming together at the table and becoming one. Well, you have salons at your house where people come together, they share their stories, and there's a becoming one in that conversation. It's the same thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because it's a human experience. That's what it all is human experience. When you name it religious, it seems to be different and have a different weight to it.
Well, I'm going to challenge that a little bit because what happens at a salon and kind of the point of it is to bring people together who might share very different beliefs and to get them to see the humanity in each other. Whereas I feel like the goal of religion is to get people all believing the same thing. You don't feel that way?
Well,
okay.
Okay. The goal of an okay, you're right, you're correct. Most religions and institutions try to get themselves to be correct. Yeah. I would challenge it and say that's not at all the purpose of religions. And if you scratch, again, where I was talking earlier about when you start scratching back and you start looking at the roots, you start looking at what was happening, that's not the pulse of the first.
We need more
Experience.
scratchers.
We need more scratchers.
We need everybody to be scratching.
Yeah.
All right.
You know, and how religion happens is there's somebody who has an experience that's really cool. And the people around them notice that and say, hey, I want to have that experience too. Now, usually that first person tries to teach that first group around them how to have the experience for themselves. And usually they'll say, this is my experience. Now you need to figure out what your experience is going to be.
That I can handle. That's good.
The next generation never met the rabbi or the teacher or the guru or the prophet or whatever. To teach them, this middle generation has to start handing down some lessons.
This is what they did.
Yes.
You do that too.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then it starts becoming ritual. That's when it goes. That's when it starts going south, and that's when it's like, oh, you have to believe this. And so by the time you get to 4 or 5 generations later, then it's all just completely. Nobody even knows what the founder was even saying usually.
Right. We don't have primary sources here.
Right.
Yeah, that
Yeah.
would be helpful.
Yeah.
I like that message. Like this is how I got here. You need to. Yeah, that's something that's palatable.
I mean, one thing I love about Francis is on his deathbed, he says, "Okay, I did what was mine to do, and then may God show you what yours to do."
That's lovely.
Like, there's freedom in that. Like, don't do what I did. You do what you're supposed to do.
You're on your own, buddy.
You got to
Figure it
work this
out.
out with God and whatever you're going to do. That's not mine. I'm not responsible for you.
Right.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. Let's see. Where are we at with time?
Wow.
Wait, is that how long we've been talking?
45
That's
minutes.
the time. I thought it started at 0, and we were at 1 hour and 46 minutes.
No,
I was like, what?
Wow. No.
Okay.
That was a lot of religion. Wow.
Yeah, I know.
I wasn't expecting that, but
Me
I'm
neither.
good with that.
Yeah, I
I'd
wasn't
rather talk about
expecting it either.
boys.
I was just going to say, can we pivot to something a little more fun? Let's talk about the gay life. Or just the life, as
Yeah,
you might
life in
call it.
general, yes.
Okay. Yes, let's talk about boys. All right, let's talk about dating. So you were married, right? Or was it just a long-term relationship?
Long-term relationship.
Long-term relationship. You shared a home with
Yeah.
your ex, and you are 1 year out of that, 2 years?
2.
2 years out of
2 years
that.
and 2 weeks.
Okay, what's
Not
it?
that I'm counting.
Yeah, just last week it was 2 years and 1 week.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
we're on top of
because
this.
it's attached. Okay, so it's okay. Well, let me just say it. October 4th is the feast of St. Francis, the anniversary of when he died.
All comes back to Francis.
It does. He and I broke up just a few days before the feast of St. Francis. We moved into a house together on October 4th. It's all right there attached to that date. Like, if it had happened in the middle of March, I would be like, when was it? I don't remember. But unfortunately, for the rest of my life, I will remember that.
Okay, that would be the Ides of March. So there's the lit major in me.
Okay, see, yeah, that would
okay.
mean nothing to me. So anyway, yes.
You know, yeah, for some reason, there's a word for the 15th of March, a term, the Ides of March. It's in Shakespeare, that's why.
I know what it is, yeah.
I figured. All right. What is dating life like for you now? Could you mind sharing, what is your age? I told you
I'm
mine.
61.
61.
Yeah.
All right. So you are a 2 years single, 61-year-old man out there in the dating life.
I don't know if I'm out in the dating life,
Okay.
to be honest with you. I will say, well, I've been really transparent with you and I guess your audience now. I'm still relatively heartbroken, I think. You know, when I left the Franciscans, and I really didn't expect to leave, but when it was time to go, it was time to go, and I knew that. I knew it was not going to be a life. It was not a life I could stay in and do authentically. A year later, and my life, I mean, I started everything over because I had given my money and everything I owned to the poor when I joined. Like, I literally started with nothing again. A year after being out, I met my ex, built a life together. That ended. So, like, those are 2 really big losses in a very short period of time historically in my life, in my story. So I'm not sure I'm completely over it yet. But I'm in a much better space than I was several years or just several months ago even. have I had a date? I don't think I've actually had a date since we broke up.
Okay.
I don't know. I don't know. I don't know what that would look like. There's also the reality. I'm a 61-year-old man. That's not necessarily popular anymore in the community.
Wow.
There's that happens.
Yeah.
I'm a little bit more invisible. I mean, it just even in social crowds, like as you get older, you become more invisible to a crowd. That's just the way it is. And I would not have understood that until now. And I'm like, oh, I get that. So I don't know what happens. I don't know that it's an option any longer, really. I mean, maybe it is. I don't know. At the same time, I'm really loving the freedom of being able to like come do a podcast on a Saturday afternoon without anybody saying, "What are you going to do today?"
Yes.
Like I didn't have to work this out with anybody, you know?
Yeah, I feel that. That's why I'm enjoying single life right now. For
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
But I got my first taste of what you're talking about when I first became a mom. I am telling you, a stroller is man repellent. It's like an invisibility cloak.
Yeah, I bet.
Rolling a stroller is like suddenly, I mean, 9 months before you were a very viable mate, right? Like you were somebody that somebody wanted to take and mate with. And 9 short months later, you are invisible, which is biologically important, I think. Like we need to be kind of shrouded and, you know, caring for children and for a time. But it is a weird reality to suddenly face, you know, to just suddenly be that invisible to men, and I don't know, maybe women too. I'm not sure about that, but I am understanding, you know, getting closer to 50 myself. I am understanding how much liberation comes with that too, with that kind of, you know, you have to mourn it. I think the idea like mourning your most sexual years or whatever, but also like gives you this kind of freedom to focus on other things, and that's probably another podcast.
That is truly true. I'm there. That is really true. I think for me personally, the thing that kind of, you know how I said earlier that family was the hook. Then saying, okay, I will be single for the rest of my life, is really working against that hook. But there is a freedom with that, and there is a freedom to start doing the things you want to do. And it's like, well, okay, this is good. You know, I'm like, all right, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What do you do at Christmas time usually?
I don't have a real set tradition for Christmas. So one of the things I did when I was with the brothers is we helped a number of refugees resettle. Several of them I'm still very close with, and I usually spend Christmas with them to some degree. Last year they were moving though, and they didn't, because they're not from a Christian background, Christmas doesn't really mean much to them. So they didn't really realize that they were leaving me on my own. And being still, you know, relatively, you know, out of the relationship, it was a kind of a sad Christmas.
Oh.
Yeah, but it's all right. This like Christmas it's just a day. Like we hype stuff up so much.
It is, but I mean, I asked that because this year we're going to celebrate with my family earlier in the month. So I'm thinking of hosting an orphan Christmas.
Sweet.
So yeah, you're welcome.
Okay.
We'll have a little family-ish situation. But so backtracking a little bit to the invisibility of getting older, I would say, now we had fun at the Pride Festival.
Yeah.
I especially enjoyed being witness to this dynamic that it was all new to me. I was like,
gay
what?
radar.
It was, I mean, okay, let me just describe one of these situations. I'm standing next to Mike, and there's a guy behind me, and then he's, you know, saying, "Oh, check out this guy. The guy in this T-shirt, and he's cute and stuff." And then I look over, and then you revealed to me that you had already had several sort of exchanges of glances, to the point where at that point you were already like letting me know that the dynamic had shifted a little bit, and maybe he made eye contact with you once, but he wasn't doing it again. There was all this subtext going on, and I felt like you seemed pretty engaged in the conversation that you and I were having. I had no idea that this was happening in the background, and I was so surprised and impressed with how much information was being exchanged in a very little actual. There was no talking at all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's radar. Gaydar, the gaydar they call it.
Yeah, but it was more than that. Okay, so later, there was a guy that had been sitting kind of nearby. We had mentioned him. I think he was one guy in the tank top, and then it's been fun checking out guys with you, by the way. That is fun. And so we were walking, and this is later. We were walking, and I saw, you didn't see this, I think, because you were facing me. I saw that same guy make eyes at his partner and motion in your direction. And then I just quick checked to see if there's anyone behind us. Like, was he looking at you? And then I was like, hey, that guy, he like made a motion to the guy he's with. And you were like, oh, I know. Yeah, we already. And I was like,
We've already seen each other. We've already seen each other, right? I know what there was there. Yeah.
But what do you think he was indicating to his guy? Like, they liked you? You think if I weren't there, they would have approached you? Like, what was exchanged?
Those two would have never approached me. And they're married, I'm sure. At least my assumption is they're married. The one liked me. The other one would not have. I would not have been his type.
Okay,
So-
but do you think that maybe so they were just having fun, like we were pointing out men to each other?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was fun. It made me want to spend more time with you and see, because you guys seem to make things happen really easily.
We have been accused of that.
But it's so efficient. I was telling one of my girlfriends about this, and we were like, compared to all the in our head stuff, that
Yeah.
other people do, I just thought it was a very efficient way to signal.
I've never really thought about my sexuality as efficient, but I'll live with that. I'll go with it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was impressive, actually. So here's something, and you can answer this in the context of gay men your age or just men your age. I told you earlier I had an experience this morning that I wanted to run by you. I went to a bike shop because I have a newly acquired bike that our producer Jeff here really tuned up for me. Really did a nice thing. And it's running great. And I was looking for a lock and a helmet. I stopped at a bike shop. Did not get those things, but he helped me with some security things. I just ended up in the really company of a bike guy, like a older bike guy. He was super cool. I ended up spending like an hour there, and he was telling me things. And then another bike guy wandered in, and anyway, he says to me, I was thinking of doing this thing that someone mentioned to me, and he was like, "Oh, do you think you need that?" And I said, "Well, I don't know. Someone said maybe I should look into that." And he's like, "A man, right?" And I was like, "Yeah." And he was like, "Probably mansplaining." And I was like, maybe. And he's like, I understand. He's like, it's something that I used to do a lot too. And then he was about to tell me why maybe I want to reconsider the advice that was given and from other angles. But I stopped him and I said, can I ask you how did you learn to stop mansplaining? Like, what prompted that? What even made you want to, made you even aware of it? This guy's probably in his 60s. Made you aware of it, made you want to stop that behavior. And he said, oh, I think probably Buddhism.
Oh,
and then
beautiful.
we had a nice conversation about Buddhism. And but I found it encouraging that a man his age was aware of this and careful of it. He also asked me at one point if I wanted to be told this thing before,
Beautiful. Beautiful.
It was really cool. So it kind of got me thinking about, and one thing I really admire about my dad is 67, and he's one of these people who's very open and wants to be told and wants to know, okay, things like this, how do I not be a mansplainer? And I thought, for you, what's something that you wish men of your demographic, whether it just be your age or specifically gay men, would learn to kind of think about more and maybe try to go with the times in a way, if it's something that is changing because younger people are helping call attention to it, or is there anything that comes to mind like that?
So interestingly enough, most of my peers, most of my friends, are younger than me.
That's why I'm asking you, actually.
Yeah, I have a couple who are my age or a little bit older. So my blind side is going to be this. Because we're queer, we think we're progressive. And we think there's nothing more to learn because we've already learned like how to push back against all that stuff. But that's a blind side because there are things still happening that we miss. But I can't point to one particular thing and say, I wish that this particular age group of men would be doing something different or thinking something different. You know, I mean, sometimes I look at like, yeah, I mean, I still think sometimes like within the gay community, at least, there's still a division between men and women. You know, gay men and lesbians don't always hang out together, but that's not always true. It's definitely better now than it was back in the 60s and the 50s. I mean, there was no hanging out at that point in time. But I think that's ending and dissolving a little bit. I think, you know, I look at young people and particularly young queer people now and just how fluid they are in and out of community and society and people and friendships and like, so that's like, I mean, just like, that's better. I do come from an age group that pronouns are a struggle for me. I'm just going to be honest with that. Like I get it, I really do, but I have a hard time remembering people's pronouns, and that may be true for some of the older gay guys that I know. Not that we don't want our youngsters to be loved and accepted and free and embraced for who they are, but sometimes it's just the limitation of like I don't know how to do that or how to even remember that kind of stuff. But that's about. I'm sure there'll be something else comes to my mind about an hour from now. Yeah.
We'll call Jeff back.
Yeah, we'll call Jeff.
Emergency.
I got another confession to make now. Yeah. How about you though? That's a great. I mean, that's a great question. I mean, is there anything? Yeah. And from either way, from like what you would feel like women in your age group would do, or things that you see men doing that you wish they would do differently.
Well, it's interesting you brought up the pronoun thing because I had a coworker say to me very dismissively, was kind of making fun of the idea of that in a way that made it clear to me he thought I would just laugh along, you know, and like, I don't understand all this, you know, them, they, whatever. And I said, oh, well, we have had a number of trainings on that. You know, they were pretty in depth. Like I just I'm losing a little bit of patience for that. Not the lack of understanding about it. I think it's okay and welcome to admit that you don't understand it or that you struggle with it in the way that you just did, in a very empathetic way and just an honest way. But just the outright dismissal of it, I'm losing a little bit of patience for that.
I can see that.
But that's not. I mean,
and just for me to clarify, it's not so much that even that I think it's weird. I was in a circle once and everybody's going around saying their names and their pronouns. I'm not going to remember your name.
Yeah, it's hard to hear it once.
Like, I'm just like I don't.
know.
I'm going to slip with it.
Yes.
Where I see younger people not slip. Like younger people, like they can just change.
Do they?
Yeah.
I'm surprised if they could just get it in one shot because it is like we forget names. We forget. I mean, that's just human.
I have some friends who have 10-year-old kids, and their aunt is trans. And when they transition from male to female, they switch pronouns just instantly. And I still use the pronoun wrong occasionally.
The kids
will correct me in a heartbeat. I'm like, I'm trying.
Yeah.
So that's yeah.
That's pretty. Yeah, I do love that about our young people. My son is 15. He just turned 15, and his generation, they have there's just no resistance there. They're just so open and accepting. You know?
Yeah.
Although I thought that to be the case, and I was having a conversation with one of his friends who kind of let me know there's still resistance out there. So I guess I have to check myself on that. Maybe I want that to be true, but it's not exactly all the way true. I want to give some more
because I interrupted
your question. Yeah. No, I think one thing I'm interested in right now and kind of thinking about with people my age, I'm interested in spending more time with people who don't want life to happen to them. They want to pursue the things that they're interested in. And I feel like, I don't know if it's that because I'm getting older, but I just feel like I hear people complaining more. And I feel like if you're complaining a lot, you're like a victim of your circumstances. I can't think of a lot of things that I could spend a lot of time complaining about without wanting to make some effort to change whatever it is that I'm complaining about. And I fear that the older I get, the more I'm just going to have to listen to people complain. So that's one thing that I would like to see. People just taking more charge in their lives, having more volition, more personal responsibility, those sorts of things. Because I don't think of myself as being without empathy, but I also, it's just difficult for me to hear somebody complain about the same thing like 6 times and make no effort to tweak it, fix it.
That makes sense. On some level, I think some of that is a process. If it's grief or something like that, where people will be complaining about something for a while, it takes a while to work through it. But there are some people who get hooked and would like to complaining. I mean, that's something they like doing. It is also, I think, as I watch my friends age, it's a hard balance of detachment and letting go, actually. It's not even a balance. It's just complete detachment of the things you start giving up as you get older. And that's really hard. When you're wanting to say, hey, I want to embrace this. I want to be young. I want to be, well, not even young. I just want to do all these things I love to do. But now all of a sudden you just can't do that. For whatever reason, your body just isn't allowing that any longer. And it's a hard place not to start complaining at that point in time. But it's a little different than what you're saying, though.
Yeah, but I can see what you're saying as well. There's I'm sure, a mourning process to go through, really, with the loss of the ability to do certain things. Yeah. What do you like about hanging out with young people, or what do you like that you see in young people these days?
It's just kind of natural. Most of my friends are younger than me. I don't know.
You're young at heart.
I guess. I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah.
If we're going to talk about it from a gay male perspective, my generation is gone. We died. AIDS. My generation. I'm just a little bit younger, but that age group from just 4 or 5 years older than me, than 10 years older, they're all gone. They died. So when I look at gay peers, there's naturally going to be more young gay men than there are my age. Yeah.
Yeah, that makes me sad.
Yeah.
Yeah. I have different reasons for, gravitating toward younger people, but
I don't think that's intentional. I can't say that I think about it that way, but I think that is a reality sometimes where there's not as many, there's just more younger ones.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you think that everybody let me ask you, have you ever been attracted to a woman?
You mean physically? There's women I think are cool.
Romantically or sexually?
I've wanted to be, and I've tried to be, but no, it was a fake.
Just zero?
It's just nothing.
None?
Nothing.
You're not even on the spectrum. You're all the way over.
I will stop myself from saying something right now because somebody may see this someday. But yes, I am. It's just not there.
Okay.
Yeah. It's just not. I've tried. No. It's no. Anyway, stop, Michael.
Yeah. Okay. Fair enough.
Yeah.
Do you feel like that's a good stopping point here?
I'm going to stop.
Yeah. I think that was a good.
I was about to say the thing. Stop, Michael. Don't say it.
Thank you so much.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you. This was so much fun.
It was fun.
Yeah.
It definitely went more religion than I expected.
A lot more than I was expecting. You didn't even bring up Planet of the Apes, which is where I wanted to go.
Maybe next time.
Thank you for doing this. Thanks for letting me be your guinea pig.
Thank you, Jeff. Okay. We'll say goodbye for now.